नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Hello and welcome to my channel Kaliyuga Dharma. We will be beginning the actual narrative of the Mahabharata today in this episode. The very beginning of the Mahabharata starts off with a scene in the holy forest of Naimisharanya, a forest region in the Sitapur district of Uttar Pradesh, exactly 90 kilometers north of Lucknow. This is a forest wherein throughout yugas, devas and rishis have conducted yajnas and penances, sanctifying the very air and soil of that place with their sattva and the presence of Bhagavan Sriman Narayana. As expected, a large congregation of sages is visible herein in the very opening scene of Mahabharata. Now, the Mahabharata itself was compiled by Bhagavan Vedavyasa well after the deaths of the Pandavas and well into the generation of their great grandson. He compiled all the episodic events of that period pertaining to the lives of the Pandavas and the Avatara Kala of Bhagavan Shri Krishna, and he taught it to his many students, one of whom was Maharishi Vaishampayana. It was Vaishampayana who narrated it for the first time to human ears in the court of King Janamejaya, the great grandson of Arjuna. The very start of the Mahabharata is thus a scene from the forest of Naimisharanya, where a group of sages are seated by a yajna fire. This yajna has been conducted over a 12-year period by them, and at the end of the yajna, the Dirgha Satra Yajna as it is called, as per Vedic tradition, Puranic episodes about Bhagavan Sriman Narayana are to be recited. And that was when the Suta Ugrashrava came to the forest straight from the court of King Janamejaya, having heard the entire Mahabharata being recited there by Maharishi Vaishampayana. Now, Ugrashrava was a Suta, the son of another great Suta teacher named Romaharshana, who himself was the rebirth of the Vanara Dvivida from the Ramayana, who had fought as one of Sugriva's army generals for Bhagavan Sri Rama in Lanka against Ravana. Now, a little bit about Sutas. What are Sutas and why is he called a Suta? Like Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra being the primary human varnas, Sutas are a varna that are born by the intermarriage of Kshatriya men to Brahmana women. They are a varna emanating from Varna Sankara between a Kshatriya husband and a Brahmana wife. They are meant to be warriors alongside Kshatriyas, and they have no Yagnopavita Samskara. In essence, they do not wear the Janayu thread, the holy thread. Their highest dharma is mastering Itihasas and Puranas and teaching them to the world. They are in essence warrior preachers, charioteers and ambassadors of the Vedic world. Like we will be seeing throughout Mahabharata, we will see good people of every varna and we will also see fallen, adharmic, evil people of every varna. Likewise, the Sutas were no exception to this. There were great Sutas, Dharmic Sutas in the past. Some examples include Sumantra, Dasharatha and Sri Rama's ambassador, Daruka, Sri Krishna's scholarly charioteer, and Ugrashrava himself. Whereas some evil Sutas, as we shall see in the Mahabharata, were Kichaka, the brother-in-law of King Virata of Matsya, and his 105 brothers, all of whom Bhima kills in the Adiparva, which we will see much later. Here again, I must remind you that every varna will have good people and bad people, and the Mahabharata is the best place to see this. That in every celestial race of creatures, you will have good as well as you will have adharmic beings. Ugrashrava's conversation with the sages begins when they ask him to recite the entirety of the Mahabharata to them. He begins the recitation with the following Mangala Shasanam that I just recited a while back. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. At this point, I must request you to recite the shloka every single time you sit, even before YouTube, to listen to these episodes. It is a mandatory thanksgiving to Sriman Narayana, his Amsha Nara, who incarnates as Arjuna, who was his greatest servant in Mahabharata, his Amsha Bhagavan Vedavyasa himself, and of course, Devi Saraswati, who has been given the position of the Devi of Enlightenment by Sriman Narayana himself. Without reciting this thanks, we will not gain the full fruit of Mahabharata. The very opening lines of Ugrashrava establish that the single, irreplaceable, birthless, deathless, all perfect, eternal, almighty is Sriman Narayana and none other. The Mahabharata, explains the Sutta Bhagavata, is an essence level summary of all four Vedas and tells you in an episodically case by case narration as to the very purpose why everything exists, the relation between the Almighty Paramatman, Jivatmans, and how the latter must reach the former. Mahabharata is thus a summation of all Vedic essences, giving it the epithet of the fifth Veda. These shlokas illustrate the position the Mahabharata occupies among all Shastras. Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Vyasayamita Tejase Yasya Prasadad Vakshyami Narayana Katham Imam. Bhagavan Sri Vedavyasa is referred to as Amita Tejaha, meaning that his Brahma Varchas, the power of his penance, has absolutely no limits, and that it was by his grace that the great Narayana Katha Mahabharata came into being and has reached all of us. It is thus clearly a Narayana Katha. It's a Katha about centric to Bhagavan Sriman Narayana himself. Sarvashramabhishamanam Sarvatirthavagahanam Na Tatha Faladasute Narayana Katha Yatha Nasti Narayana Samam Na Bhutam Na Bhavishyati Etena Satyavakyena Sarvarthan Sadhayamyaham. These two shlokas again goes to say that listening to Mahabharata gives you more punya than even visiting punya bhumis will give you, and far greater dharmic gatis than many other dharmas would give us. It also finally establishes that there is no one, has never been anyone, and will never be anyone equal to or even resembling Sriman Narayana, as the position of Paramatman, Almighty, is occupied solely by him. Next, Ugrashrava touches upon the topic of creation itself. Creation is one of the Mahabharata's most fascinating, complex, and revealing topics of discussion that recurs time and again across Parvas. At different levels, we are told about how things and creatures come into existence and how they go out of existence as well. From the lokas to celestial bodies to the devas down to the smallest ant, how things come into creation. Everything is explained pretty explicitly by the Mahabharata's various Parvas. Creation arises with Brahma awakening on his celestial homeworld. His recitation of the Vedas results in the formation of other celestial planes and the emergence of various living beings, each of which is basically a Jivatman, spontaneously taking on a body as per its pre-existing karmaphala and going forth to experience that karmaphala by means of outliving a lifetime or a janma, either as a deva, a human, an animal, an asura, a rakshasa, a yaksha, or literally any other living celestially ordained creature. It could be a dog, a goat, a pig, anything. Sriman Narayana's creation, Brahma, in turn creates several levels of devas and rishis who in turn perform their own penances and yajnas and create their own creations, and this goes on and on into many sub-cycles of creations within the greater cycle called the Kalpa. In parallel, Brahma steadily creates celestial realms and celestial bodies, worlds called lokas for these cosmic races to inhabit. And since time runs at varying rates across lokas, creations of various kinds may not come into being even as creatures of other kinds pre-exist them. And likewise, by the time some creatures have come into being, some creatures may have gone extinct. As per the will of Sriman Narayana, the time of existence of their Vamshas would have ended by then. Thus, there were times when there were no humans but only Devas and Devarishis such as Kashyapa. And there were times when certain species of animals, as we've seen in the Mahabharata itself, did not even exist. There was a time on earth when there were no snakes, for example, and then they came into being after a point of time. Now, when it comes to humans, humans come directly from the Devas. The first such human was a Deva called Manu, a Deva whose bodily gunas became the template for humans today as we know them. The Manu was the offspring of the Deva Brihad Bhanu, also known as Vivaswan or Surya Deva. His descendants were many in number and he lived for millennia on end. His descendants became the various human races and varnas we know today, for the most part. Dynasties such as Ikshvaku, which is Sri Rama's dynasty, or the Somavamsha, Sri Krishna's dynasty, and the Pandavas' dynasty, all eventually descend from Manu himself. And Ugrashrava tells us a little bit about Manu and the important position he occupies. Now we finally come into the topic of how Ganapati came into all of this. Vyasa wanted a scribe who could not only write but also understand and capture the exact essence, word for word, with full understanding, the narration of the Mahabharata. Being Paramatman's Amsha himself, Vyasa could have himself easily identified the right scribe for the job. But as we shall see repeatedly across the Mahabharata itself, Paramatman, even when he comes as an avatara, he allows his creations to do the duties assigned to them, and out of respect for Brahma, whom he himself had appointed as Acharya to all Devas, he asked Brahma to select the right Devata to be scribe. Although he could have done it himself, Brahma selected Ganapati. Vyasa invoked Ganapati, and there he appeared, asking Vyasa, how may I be of service? Now Vyasa was given a condition by Ganapati to remain his scribe. The condition was that Vyasa keep narrating non-stop, and that even a single pause would lead to Ganapati getting up and leaving for good. Vyasa agreed with a sub-condition of his own, that while he would narrate without pause, he would move on to a new section of narration only when Ganapati could explain the meaning of the section he had just finished narrating. Ganapati agreed to this and thus gained the unique and immense fortune of becoming Bhagavan Sri Vedavyasa's scribe. To be noted is the fact that Brahma declared Bhagavan Vyasa to be the greatest and foremost authority on Sanskrit, so much so that anything Vyasa said in Sanskrit would have to be taken as the gold standard of Sanskrit without question. A practice we follow till date in grammar classes, wherein Sanskrit scholars would repeat a disclaimer that if Vyasa has used a certain word or grammatical tool in a certain manner, which contradicts what Panini might have written as per Panini's grammar rules, then Panini has to be ignored and Vyasa's word is final. Now here is finally a breakup of Mahabharata's verses. What we learn from this is that it is meant not just for humans, but for all Jivatmans, as they must strive to reach Bhagavan in Vaikuntha. It also stresses the fact that Devas and other celestial races are not that different from animals and humans on earth, for they too are Jivatmans manifesting in such bodily forms due to their infinitely gained karma phalas through infinitely many lifetimes in samsara. Thus, it is the ultimate truth of the Vedas which the Mahabharata upholds in an episodic, example-based, case-by-case existential narrative that, as Ugrashrava explains in the beginning of Mahabharata, gives it its unique sheen of being a moksha shastra, a scripture that tells us the path to the Almighty Paramatman Sriman Narayana and the many dharmic ways to achieve this path. As always, a big shout out to Dakshin Vrindavan for doing the work that pleases Sriman Narayana, the work of saving cows and bulls who themselves are amshas of Paramatman himself. Visit their website and help them however you can. Needless to say, Gau Seva is Bhagavat Seva. Srimate Narayanaya Namo Namaha.